Thank you for indulging us and showing that. That's on our website. It was a nice piece that our marketing team put together. Again, we get asked a lot, what do you guys do exactly? So that is a nice little way to summarize what we do. So without further ado, we're going to get into our morning lightning rounds. This is a new format. We have not done this before at one of our events. We have, instead of doing the breakouts, which is a more typical kind of structure, we always heard back that people really wanted to clone themselves to be able to go to different breakouts because they kind of felt like for their job they had to go maybe to the housing one, but they really were interested in learning more about forest resiliency, and they missed that. So we thought we'd try this time, so we're really interested in your feedback. We're giving 8 different experts 10 minutes, and we're keeping them to that, 10 minutes to present a problem, like why are we talking about this? What is the solution that they're talking about with us today, and how you all can get involved. So we're going to try it, and our first one up is going to be Ariana from TAMC, and Rick from the city of, let me forward this. From the city of Seaside, sorry. And they're going to talk about a really cool thing that's happening in transportation. So without further, it is transformative. Yeah. So thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you
Off
for
you go.
having me. Okay. Good morning. My name is Ariana Green. I work for the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, and I manage a county-wide Safe Routes to School program and Smart Commute program. And I'm joined by Rick Riedel with the city of Seaside. I've been nominated to give the presentation today, but he'll be available for all of your questions afterwards. All right, so what's the biggest problem with transportation in our region? I think a lot of us might argue that it's traffic. But here's an example of a street with lots of lanes for traffic, no traffic, but makes for a pretty harrowing crossing for kids crossing the street to get to school. And this type of street design increases the number of pedestrians and bicyclists that are hit in our cities. And there are people who are hit in all of our cities every year. So is it safer to maybe put all of our non-driving population into cars? We do this with our children. 70% of our children today are driven to school instead of walking or biking or carpooling or taking the bus. But this leads to another problem, or contributes to another problem, and that's that 1 in 3 fifth graders living on the peninsula today are overweight or obese because they're not, in large part, getting enough daily exercise. So what's the biggest transportation problem? I think that we can all agree that these are all really big problems, and then they all need to be addressed in transportation. And the root of these problems is the way we've been designing our streets, primarily for cars and using up almost all the room for cars and not leaving room for other modes. So the obvious solution is to have a more balanced street design streets to be more balanced to accommodate more types of users, and think about people instead of just cars. But I think that everybody pretty much knows that already. Everyone in this room has probably heard a presentation about this already, and yet change is really slow. And I think that that's because there's another factor at play. And so I would argue that the biggest problem is actually our own human psychology. Our brains are hardwired to form and keep habits, even if they're bad for us, like smoking and overeating, overdrinking, and I would argue overdriving. And I would venture a guess that everyone today, including myself, got into the car and gets into the car every time they need to go someplace without even thinking about it. Cognitive psychology research shows that humans are also loss averse. And this means that the fear of loss is twice as strong as the reward of gaining something. And we see this commonly in transportation. We hear from business owners who are more afraid of losing parking to make room for something like a protected bike lane shown here, despite evidence that doing so will actually result in increased sales and revenues to their business. And this is an example of just that in Manhattan. So what's the solution? The good news is that each one of us has the power to create better transportation, healthier, safer transportation in our own communities, and we can do that by fighting our own psychology with psychology. The current research shows that the best way to overcome loss aversion and bad habits is to change your perspective and to be mindful of those habits. So how do we do this? How do we apply this to transportation? Well, we found that showing people a plan, a pretty picture of an improvement or a different design doesn't really cut it. And so this past May, TAMC partnered with the City of Seaside, Ecology Action, and the Monterey County Health Department to give the community of Seaside an opportunity to physically test out a new street design on one of their streets. So here's the street, Broadway Avenue. To the right is an elementary school, and to the left is senior housing and high-density, affordable housing. As you can see from this picture, about 90% of the right-of-way is dedicated to cars. There is a narrow sidewalk, but no bicycle facilities at all. So I think it's pretty natural to have the perspective that this street is intended for driving and pretty much driving alone. But what about this street? So this is Broadway Avenue, the same section of Broadway Avenue after we implemented our Safe Street demonstration. So you can see we sort of we reallocated some of the space from cars and gave it to some of the other modes. So we put in this wonderful protected bike lane, and we kept the on-street parking on both sides of the street, but now the parking serves as a buffer between the bicyclists and pedestrians and the moving vehicles. Before we did the demonstration, we noticed that there were a lot of people crossing the street at this site in front of the school. But as you can see, there's not really any infrastructure to help them to do that, or to even to indicate to drivers to expect a pedestrian crossing the street there. So we put in this high visibility crosswalk at that location, and this was probably the most loved feature of our demonstration. And it worked really well because we reduced the number of travel lanes from 4 lanes to 2. So pedestrians only have to cross 1 lane of travel in each direction at a time. And then this is an offset crosswalk. So in the middle there, the pedestrians actually had to turn their bodies and they had to face the oncoming traffic, which helped them make better eye contact and be more aware of the drivers coming, and also help the drivers be more aware of the pedestrians coming. So it felt really, really safe. We also wanted to give people opportunity to change their perspective by encouraging them to walk and bike through the demonstration, even if they normally drove. And we also wanted to collect data to measure any change. So we collected bike and pedestrian counts, we did traffic counts, and we collected public opinion surveys. We also held a grand opening event and bike and walk to school day events to encourage people to walk and bike. And we also provided a crossing guard at the new crosswalk to make that feel extra safe. We also challenged the parents at the elementary school to look at their current habit of driving their kids all the way through the drop-off circle to the front of school, which was taking them 10 to 15 minutes. And so we created this communications piece showing locations around the school where parents could park and then walk their kids up to the front of school and actually save time by getting out of their cars. And by the second week of our demonstration, we actually saw a 65% increase in walking during the morning peak, which is pretty amazing. And we did see a lot of people parking and walking. So were we successful in changing perspective? Our public opinion surveys said yes. The majority of people wanted to see the improvements made permanent. And this was despite increasing traffic and getting rid of 2 travel lanes on the street. Lessons learned and tips, if you'd like to do this in your community, communication is key. Make sure to loop in stakeholders early and communicate with them often, especially emergency responders, transit providers, and schools, as well as the community. And the whole point is to find out from them if they want a change in their community. Second, observe what works and what doesn't and adjust. Don't be afraid to adjust the design. We did the first day to allow traffic to flow a little bit better, and that's okay. And then use several methods of data collection to make sure you're getting a full picture and really measuring that change if there is any. So what can you do? Well, you can go big, like we did, and you can change perspective in your community by partnering with your city or county to do your own Safe Street demonstration, and TAMC would be happy to talk with you more if you're interested in doing that. Or you can change perspective at your workplace by making something, a drive-alone alternative like carpooling, more attractive. And there's some really affordable ways to do that. If you're not ready to go big, then just the next time you're driving, maybe when you're stuck in traffic trying to get out of the parking lot here, leaving the conference, think to yourself, is this really an enjoyable experience? Do I really like sitting in traffic? Is it serving me well? Is this the most efficient, cost-effective, and time-efficient way to get around? It may be for a lot of your trips, but it might not be for all of your trips. And so I challenge you to think about how you might modify your trips to serve you better and serve your health better. Some small changes you can make are you could park a block away from your school if you're dropping your kids off of school, like we did in our experiments, and walk. And you can do the same thing at your workplace if you have parking shortages at your place of work. You could also invite somebody to hop in your car in the morning and carpool. Just one day a week makes a big difference. And then lastly, please, please, please support streets that are designed for people in your community. Thank you. Yeah.
MBEP just thought this was such a cool thing that these two entities teamed up to do that we wanted to hold it up and showcase it today with all of you. We're working on a pop-up, we call these pop-ups too, which maybe isn't the correct term, but I think it's really cute that way, on like a case study that could be replicated in your hometown and to post that on our website. So we're working with TAMC to finish that draft up and what will be available shortly. But I think it's just a really great time. We have awesome on the timing. We have 5 minutes for Q&A set aside for each of our lightning rounds. So if anybody has any questions, we'll have runners going out throughout the audience to pose some questions to either Ariana or Rick.
In Watsonville, we're really attempting to do exactly what you described, but my question is, you went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. Mm-hmm. What process did you use in terms of making that happen?
Great question. Do you want me to take it, or do you want to take it?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So we first looked at the history of like the traffic volumes on the street. Because if you're under 15,000 vehicles per day, then it's usually okay to do a road diet, but you should work with an engineer to figure out what's appropriate. So that's what we did first. And then we also worked with engineers to develop the design of the demonstration.
Similar question through the Attendify app. There was a question maybe that Rick, you could answer. Were there any concerns raised by police or fire agencies on making the roads narrower?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah,
sure. Were there any concerns raised by police or fire agencies on making the roads narrower?
No, not making the roads narrower. We did work with the fire department, which is actually at the corner or one end of the demonstration, to make sure that the fire engines could make the new turning radius, because we did curb extensions at the intersection. So they did a trial run when we were putting it up to make sure that they could make that turning radius.
Great. And I just want to say too that this is a great idea. It does take some funding. You got a Caltrans grant to implement this in Seaside. And I think in Marina also, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, if those people are interested in doing this, it does take some funds to make it happen. Wendy? Oh, sorry. Haley has a question first.
Hi. Well, my question exactly is that, Kate, is that, you know, getting an engineer to come in and look at the traffic patterns and then putting all the construction in and moving things around, and of course the outreach and things. What was the cost of this one specific thing? And if somebody wanted to implement that in their neighborhood or by their closest school, what kind of funding do they have to look at trying to get in order to make those changes?
Yeah, great question. So again, Kate mentioned that we got a grant to do this. So this is all part of a Safe Routes to School planning effort that we're doing in Seaside and Marina. And so we did write in some of the costs into the grant, but we definitely we definitely used a lot of in-kind and some local sources of funding to to go big because we did a really big demonstration. It was expensive, but so it really depends on the design of the demonstration and the size of the demonstration you're trying to do. But I would recommend being strategic about the location. So we chose that location because the intent is the next step is to apply for grant funding to implement it. And so we wanted a street that was near a school and would serve seniors and all sorts of other factors. But it is a commitment of resources and time to do.
Great. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for questions. I wanted to mention that in the Attendify app, the questions that don't get answered here today, we're going to have staff follow up with our speakers, and that will be posted to our website as part of the recap in a PDF format. So thank you, Ariana and Rick. Good stuff. Okay, we're going to move on now to our next lightning round. So you kind of get the feel how it's going to go. It's going to be kind of rapid fire. I wanted to just take a minute to introduce Alicia. I first saw her speak at the State of the Valley, which is a big event that the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and their partners put on. Actually, it's joint venture Silicon Valley that puts that particular event on, sorry. And big, huge event, and Alicia got up there and talked about this idea of scenario planning. And those of you that were here last year at State of the Region may recall that I referenced some of her beautiful illustrations that she's going to share again about what does our Bay Area look like in 2050. And so I thought it would be a wonderful follow-up to ask her to come and be one of our lightning round speakers and share with us not only what Spur's doing in the Bay Area, but help us think more about how we do more scenario planning here for our region. So please welcome Alicia Jean-Baptiste to the stage.
This is the clicker? Mm-hmm. Yep, we get that one. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Alicia Jean-Baptiste. I'm CEO at Spur, and Spur is a member-supported urban policy organization. We work to create a better Bay Area region through research, education, and advocacy. We have offices in San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland. Fun fact, however, I grew up in Santa Cruz, so so at Spur, we have been working to develop a long-term regional strategy, really founded on a vision of a Bay Area that is equitable, sustainable, and prosperous. And we've been working on really developing a very specific roadmap to achieve that vision state because we are not there today. Arguably, the region is the most prosperous it has ever been, but that prosperity is very fragile, and it is not in any way widely shared. We are confronting an affordability crisis in the Bay Area that is extreme and is very much a byproduct of our unwillingness to build housing. Our population has grown over the past 20 years by about 1 million people, so about 15%, and yet we have underproduced housing in the tune of about 700,000 units, including about 200,000 units at or above AMI. So we've gotten to a point in the Bay Area where we are really only producing housing that is affordable for people at 200% of AMI. We've also experienced pretty significant demographic shifts in the region. Over the past 20 years or so, we have added about 625,000 households earning $100,000 or more annually, and we lost 300,000 households earning $100,000 or less. And we often, sitting up there in the 9-county Bay Area, have this sensation that people are being pushed out to the counties surrounding the Bay Area, and when we look at the numbers there, we can actually see that happening. We see that the surrounding counties have added population in the $50,000 to $75,000 income range, but in those counties, they actually lost population at the below 50,000 level. So you have this whole kind of displacement ripple effect moving through the region. And certainly some of that income change can be ascribed to the economic boom that we've all been experiencing, but we also know that actual wages have been extremely stagnant and anything less than about the 80th percentile for decades now. We only see movement at the lower rungs when we have minimum wage increases. So we have a region that has increasing inequality, and the dynamic at play means that the distance between people at the top of the rung in the Bay Area and at the bottom is growing ever and ever wider, and we have some of the highest levels of inequality in the entire nation. So on top of all that, we are also contending with some environmental challenges. Because we built our region around the car, we put jobs in one place, we have an incredibly dispersed land use pattern, we put homes over here, we have incredible congestion. And it's a very logical conclusion to the way that we built the region, but it is a problem for many of us. We also know we have to continue to adapt to climate change. Even if we stopped all polluting emissions today, there is enough stuff in the system that we are going to be dealing with the impacts of climate change for millennia to come. So, with all that in play, how do we build a region that is equitable, sustainable, and prosperous? So we started this work by recognizing that we have choices, and that our choices lead to different futures, and that we can model those choices. And so we chose to focus on two variables, the first being, will we continue to have economic prosperity, or will our economic prosperity begin to decline? And will we become more socially inclusive, or will we allow exclusion to grow worse? That modeling led us to 4 different scenarios. In the first one, you have a region in which some people do very well, and I would argue that we're experiencing a lot of this today, and particularly in the urban core of the Bay Area. If you can afford it, you can have a great life. Another scenario, we decide that actually economic growth is the problem, and we decide to drive industry away. A third scenario, we become so focused on our individual well-being that we start to disregard our collective systems that support all of us, and we just sort of battle it out over our limited resources. Or, and I assume you know this is going to be the Goldilocks scenario here, we start to recognize that our individual well-being is a byproduct of our collective well-being. We focus on ensuring that we have the economic resources we need to support us as individuals and as a community. And we use those resources to invest in our collective systems, things like transportation, housing, climate adaptation, education. So we choose option 4, and we've been basing our work in a concept of this idea that we have to invest in the systems that support all of us. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of solution sets that we've come up with using those principles. So the first, grappling again with environmental challenges, we know that we have to adapt to sea level rise. So with the San Francisco Estuary Institute, we created an adaptation atlas that provides the tools and the strategies to do the adaptation work that we need. The work starts with the understanding that there's really no one-size-fits-all strategy to sea level rise adaptation across the Bay shoreline. The physical processes that are at play are really occurring at a Bay scale. They care nothing about city boundaries. Only we care about city boundaries. Nature does not. So we approached our analysis really following nature's lead with respect to understanding which solutions are right, excuse me, for which parts of the different shoreline. And we developed a suite of solutions mapped to what we called operational landscape units. And we have been really, really pleased to see that this is a toolkit that county governments have been able to actually build into the work that they're doing. San Mateo County has been using this quite extensively. Another area, we just heard about some of our transportation challenges from the prior speakers. We have insane congestion in the Bay Area. We have to provide other alternatives. The reality of our land use pattern is that for most people, there really is no viable alternative to driving alone. So we've started to consider what would it look like to have a mega-regional rail strategy. If you had mega-regional rail that could serve as a truly viable alternative to driving alone. And we envision a system in which you can get anywhere to anywhere in the Bay Area by rail in an hour or less, and could connect to the surrounding counties in 90 minutes or less. The system itself relies on the existing system with a few incremental infrastructure investments, but mostly it actually relies on providing a lot more service in a much more coordinated fashion. Identifying some hub stations, having service come pulsed in and pulsed out in a coordinated fashion. And then you can also start to use your hub stations as organizing principles for your land use decisions. And very importantly, we are looking at how could you use investment in transportation to serve as a vehicle for asset creation in the low-income communities where many of these stations currently reside versus being one of the ways in which displacement is perpetuated. So there are a ton of questions that we are still grappling with, where we have about another year in the work that we're doing, and are looking for some big answers. So we're short about 2.5 million housing units in the Bay Area, 9 counties over the next 50 years. We've produced, our high year in the Bay Area was about 40,000 housing units. That was back in the 80s. That was when we believed in sprawl. How are we going to get ourselves to a place where we can produce 50,000 units a year? How do we sustain our economic prosperity? We know that fixing some of the current weaknesses in our system is going to be required, but also really importantly, how do we start to share it more widely? Billions, this says billions, really it should say hundreds of billions. We have a massive need for infrastructure investment across the region. We have underinvested for decades, for generations. How will we sustainably pay for this? And then really importantly, what are the regional capacities we need to be able to perceive the challenges that we face from the regional scale? So often we are given tools that are very narrow because we are only able to act from a city by city or a JPA kind of standpoint, and we need to be able to have tools that allow us to act out on different scale. So lots of work to come. This is obviously a long-term endeavor, but we do believe that by doing this work in partnership with folks like you all, we're starting to lay that foundation for the new social compact, for that understanding that it really takes the investment in all of us for each of us individually to thrive. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Leisha. I'm so glad she was able to come and share this really inspiring perspective and all the great work that Spur is doing. I really encourage you to go and research more about the work they're doing and support them as a member if you're so inspired. We have about 3 minutes for questions. So anybody questions, and we also, as I said earlier, we'll be doing it through the Attendify app following up. Sham, Haley's on her way.
Thank you very much. I'm Sham Kamath from CSU MB. My question relates to what Ariana presented, and that has to do with, so that we don't fall into the traps that Jane Jacobs talked about, how do we get the change in perspective that what you're saying will entail? Because it's really a change in perspective of the planners, the city managers, et cetera. What is the work you're doing in that regard?
I think as paradoxical as this may sound, I think the fact that we are so acutely experiencing the challenges that I laid out today, the fact that if you are living in any of the urban centers in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, you literally cannot go a day without confronting homelessness and the true human impact of homelessness. What it means is that people have less and less distance from what's not working. And it is requiring, and I think enabling people to come to the conversation differently. So we are starting to see big corporations show up into the conversation with resources in a way that I haven't seen before. We're starting to see planners ask, well, we've had great intentions, and yet these are our outcomes. What do we need to shift? We're starting to see our transit agencies. We have 27 transit providers in the Bay Area, 28 by some counts. We are starting to see them have conversations with each other around how do we provide more integrated, more seamless transportation for people, because it is actually just the only solution at this point. So what is that saying? Never miss a crisis? Or there's some saying about, don't miss a good crisis, something like that, right? I think that's where we are.
I have a question through Attendify that is specific to San Benito County. It's our smallest county that's part of the Tri-County area that we call Monterey Bay region, but I don't think they're considered part of your 9-county Greater Bay Area.
Our 9 counties go up.
Yeah.
So Santa Clara County is the southernmost county for the Bay Area.
So yeah, this question is specific to around 60% of the San Benito workforce commutes daily to the Bay Area, and most of that is through small, narrower highways. And if you had your magic wand, how can we fix that?
Yeah, magic wand, we get the mega regional rail system built, right? I mean, we can go quite far south, quite far east, and bring connectivity in a way that we really have never experienced as a region. My family still lives in Santa Cruz. I would like to be able to get here more easily myself. But I really think we have to start investing in a different form of infrastructure that we know, looking globally, has worked for many, many nations for many, many years.
Right. Well, daunting but doable. That's all MBEP. When nothing's intractable, we can do it. Thank you, Alicia, for your time. Great, so on to the next. We have an inspiring speaker next. I should put that little clicker. Am I seeing it? Where is it? Sorry. Alicia, did you leave it up here? No, it's okay. I'm probably looking right at it. I'm just not seeing it. On top here? Oh, here it is, hiding. Okay, got it. Thank you. These little things. Okay, so Barry Hathaway, amazing guy. He is CEO of an organization called JobTrain. He actually participated in our last year's State of the Region as one of the breakout leader participants of that discussion around new pathways, new opportunities, new ways to get training happening here in our region, and looking at outside of our region for other models that could possibly be imported here. And he's here to follow up on that conversation to share with you a really exciting program to create a pipeline for entry-level IT jobs. Barry.
Thank you, Kate. Well, this looks a little different than last year when I was talking to about 30 people. So it's a captive audience, which is fantastic. Good morning, everybody. What if I told you that a homeless, runaway teenager would go on to create an award-winning program that helps hundreds of young people on a pathway to success? Would you be surprised if I told you that an incarcerated, homeless man in recovery will go on to run a major chain restaurant, hire scores of formerly incarcerated men and women, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to get myself back on track here. This is not my presentation. Let's see what happens if I advance. I'm just messing up the whole flow of this talk. Bear with me for a second. There we go. Okay. Just get me to where I'm supposed to be right now. Am I just pushing the wrong button? Is that what I'm doing? The right button?
Green button, the big green button.
The green button.
There we go.
There it is. Okay. Would you be surprised to learn that an incarcerated, homeless man in recovery will go on to run a major chain restaurant in San Francisco, hire scores of formerly incarcerated workers, and dramatically increase the ranking of that store in the nation? Well, meet Davida and Jeff, and they've done just that. People like Davida and Jeff exist in our communities, full of talent, capability, desire, willing to be loyal and work hard, but they simply can't get access to the great jobs that are going to lead them to economic stability. Why? Because in most cases, they simply don't have the skills employers need. What if we could get those skills into their hands? And what happens when somebody who's been very unstable in their lives and living in a very difficult situation becomes stable and doors open up to them? So as Kate said, my name is Barry Hathaway and I'm the CEO of JobTrain, a 55-year-old nonprofit that's been operating in East Palo Alto and Menlo Park for a very long time. And our job is to help very low-income people who are talented and capable and have a great desire to get ahead, to move ahead through sustainable career pathways. We talked about what is the San Francisco Bay Area where we live. I want to characterize this for you so that you can begin placing yourselves in this same situation because, well, I'll explain. So first of all, in the San Francisco Bay Area, 1.6 million people are living in poverty. That's nearly 10% of the population. This is a problem not just for those people who are living in poverty. It's a problem for all of us. It's a problem for our whole region. And employers need the men and women who are in this situation now more than ever. So our job is to make sure that we're solving it. When we solve this issue of very low-income people who are caught in the cycle of poverty because they don't have skills for the jobs employers need, when we solve this problem, we solve it for everybody. And it's a miraculous thing when we see it happen. Let me tell you how JobTrain approaches this. So we have what we think of as a three-stage process. Our idea is to meet people where they are and to be able to meet as many people as possible where they are. So we do this in what we think of as a three-stage process, or the steps to opportunity. At the first level is helping a person who is extremely unstable, food insecurity, housing insecurity, challenges with legal issues, you name it. A lot of things happen when you're low income that's very hard to pull yourself back out of. So we start with stabilization services. Once a person is stable, then we offer them a series of options to upgrade their skills. These are not yet career skills, but they're skills they'll need in any job. Things like English as a second language, or digital skills, or acquiring their high school equivalency or GED, or a whole suite of services like that. All leading ultimately to the ultimate goal of JobTrain is to get people through an intensive career training program that lands them in a career pathway that has the potential for them to grow and achieve full economic mobility. So when I say economic mobility, what I mean is, in the San Francisco Bay Area, a family of 4, think about what you think this number is, a family of 4 has to earn how much a year to make ends meet in the San Francisco Bay Area? Hold that number in your head. A lot of you know this number because of the work you do. It's $117,000 a year. That's 2 parents working, earning about $31 an hour. And so this has to be a middle wage job, a middle skill job. And you might be surprised to learn that 67% of jobs in California do not require a college degree. 43% of jobs in California that don't require a college degree are middle skill, middle wage jobs. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. And at JobTrain, the work we do, it works. How do I know it works? Let me just tell you how we did last year. Last year, we trained about 500 people in career training programs. About 85% of them finished their program. These are intensive, full-time training programs. If we get through that is really saying something. 80% of those who made it through in the last year did secure a job, earning an average wage of $45,000 a year. Now let me back up, because I forgot to say, JobTrain offers career pathways in 4 areas right now: construction trades, healthcare, technology, and culinary arts. So this $45,000 a year average starting wage is the average across all of those. Needless to say, in some it's a little lower, in others it's a little higher. But $45,000 a year equates to about $22.50 an hour. And if you heard me say earlier what it takes to make ends meet, it's still not enough. And so we're doing a lot of work right now to be building to that full economic mobility, which many of our students achieve on their own. And I'm doing that thing again. There we are. And lastly, 81% of our students still have jobs after a year. So this is working. Remember Davida? Let me tell you a little bit more about her. So Davida was a runaway teenager who dropped out of high school and found herself basically homeless within a pretty short time. Her family, her sister, convinced her to come and just talk to the folks at JobTrain to see if there's something that we could do to partner with her. In the end, and I have it on good authority that it took a while. In the end, she did agree, she did decide to go to career training with us. And she went through our culinary arts program, did extremely well. Had an internship right out of the program, got a job right after the internship, and her life began to stabilize. And for Davida, culinary arts was a means to an end. It wasn't the end for her. But becoming stable meant she could start thinking about what she wanted to do. And what she wanted to do, what she had a lot of heart and passion for, was helping young people just like her. So she went to school, she went to work for a continuation school, and has gone on to develop award-winning programs, state, California State recognized award-winning programs for helping people just like herself. This is the kind of talent we're losing out on if we don't support them to get somewhere meaningful from an economic stability standpoint. Jeff was incarcerated when he started training with Job Train. We have a very unusual program in San Mateo County that the jail and Job Train work together, and they allow inmates to come out on furlough to do training. So he went through training while he was incarcerated, got his first job at Panera Bread in San Francisco while he was incarcerated. And he stayed with Panera when he was released. Within a couple of years, Jeff had been promoted to general manager of the Panera store in San Francisco, hired scores of Job Train graduates from our culinary arts program as well, and went on to raise, this group of people raised the ranking of that Panera store, which started at number 836 in the nation to number 3 in the nation. That is talent. That is leadership. That is a person who would have been left behind had he not been given an opportunity to show what he could do. So what's next? What's next for us, because we know these programs work, and all of that was to say these programs work, is that they're needed here as well. There are some strong programs here, but we've been working with MBEP to come up with a way to fill some gaps that exist here in the Monterey Bay. Because our programs work, we feel compelled to expand them to where they're needed. Not every single thing we do, but the things that are needed particularly. And so we've been working to think about what is there something we do that's missing here in Monterey Bay, and what can we do about that? So we've decided, and this is very much on the advice of Kate and Haley from MBEP, we're going to bring our tech career training program to this region. And yes. Well, thank you, but I'm going to ask for your help. So maybe you should hold that until I've asked for your help. But this is going to be an entry-level certification, desktop support sort of certification. But let me say that while it in and of itself isn't enough, it is enough to get a person started in a career, and it is Tech 101, so they can begin branching out for the many different possibilities in the tech field from here. So we are working with MBEP, Kate and Haley, and we have been talking to some funders. I just got an email today that said we might be pretty close to a firm decision on that. And we're going to be partnering with our friends at Goodwill. And they have agreed to host our training program and deliver services to the students that they already deliver. So it's a tremendous and really positive partnership. And I'm really excited about it. So now there's the join us part. Now, to some extent, we will need some help with funding, but that's just one piece of all the ways you can work with us. If you could host an internship for a student coming out of this program, we want to work with you. We'll make sure they have the skills you need. Maybe you can come in and give guest lectures. Maybe you can be a part of our system overall. But please join us, because it's going to take this to make it all work, and it's going to take this to make this program work as well. Because everyone does deserve the dignity of work and to earn a living wage. And just ask these folks if you have any questions about it. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barry. I think it's really an exciting opportunity, and we're really thrilled to partner with you and some other folks here in the region. So stay tuned for more. I wanted to see if we had any quick questions for Barry. We have about 2 minutes. And we also, of course, will do it through the Attendify app. I have a couple questions up here. Wait, if you would just wait for 2 seconds for a mic so we can get it on video too. There you go. Thank you.
My name's Teresa, and I just have a question about how individuals come into contact with your organization. Is there a qualification? Is there some kind of evaluation about the skill level?
Yes, there is. Now, keep in mind that in our traditional environment, if somebody doesn't quite meet the minimum skill level, we can help them get there and then get them into the training program. We're hoping that we know Goodwill will offer some of these things as well. In this field, you have to have a GED or a high school diploma. You should be able to read and do math at a ninth grade level at minimum. It'll come up through the training program. And you have to be able to, you have to have the right to work. Because we're putting people into jobs in a traditional work environment. Those are the three standards that we have to meet at a minimum.
Thank you for your work.
You're
Why
welcome.
did you select IT for the Monterey area as opposed to the other disciplines?
Well, to some extent because some other discipline trainings exist here. And the last thing we want to do is come in and provide job trains programs when they're already being provided well here. But moreover, it's that there's a lot of technology innovation going on here, and there's a projection that you're going to need more technology workers. And so we're trying to get ahead of the game a little bit, getting this program launched and secure and building so we can move it in the right direction in time for the demand.
We partnered with Goodwill Industries, who have a computer lab that they have offered to this extension program in kind, so we are very grateful for them.
Yes.
And I don't know if you emphasized, Barry, that these training programs are tuition-free?
Yes.
Yes.
They're free to the student. Everything
Yes.
is free to the student.
So I just wanted to make sure this group knows that as well. And we have a question here.
Yep.
So to that point, my question is, where does the funding for this come from? Is this through like county jobs programs, or what's the funding model?
It'll be a very diverse funding model. Job Train is approved to provide training on the WIOA ETPL. So we can secure funding that way. So that'll be a part of the funding, but it's going to come from corporations, foundations, individuals, and government funding. We'll cobble it together.
Which is a really good segue to say that if you are interested either in learning more about this program and how your organization might be involved, we'd love to talk with you. There are, as Barry mentioned, a couple folks that have already expressed interest in early conversations, and we're really grateful to Goodwill, as Haley mentioned, to use their facility, which is an in-kind donation, which obviously is a huge part of the program, and they're also potentially going to give us some seed funding to get things kicked off. So, but beyond that, as Barry said, I mean, you are all the largest employers in the region. So providing your expertise, your mentoring, your job shadowing, whatever it might be that could help make this program a success once it gets off the ground, we want you to be part of it in that way too. So thank you, Barry, so much for all your good work, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And the clicker's there, yeah, okay. This clicker has been the topic of the day. There's always something, somebody's socks or something, but I think this time it's the clicker. So good. So I just wanted to remind you all that all the bios and headshots and all the detailed information about all our speakers is in your Attendify app. We did not print that in the program. Just to save paper, no single-use plastic here at all our events. We're all just trying to be more green. So I'm doing these very short, quick intros for our fabulous speakers because I want you to make sure that you're getting all the good detail that's in that Attendify app. So having said that, our next and final one before we go to lunch, we're really excited to have Matt Williams here. He's the Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for an organization called Knowledge Works Foundation based in Dayton, Ohio. So he flew out here to be with us today for 10 minutes. So we're really grateful for that. And I wouldn't do that to him unless this was a really amazing idea. So I'll keep you on the edge of your seat with that intro, and please welcome Matt to the stage.
Green button. All right, thank you. I am from an organization called Knowledge Works based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Happy to be here, even if it is for 10 minutes plus 5 minutes for questions. So at Knowledge Works, we really believe in the principle that we can create our own future. And our work is really based on that premise. And certainly the past provides the foundation for the future. And we've seen this play out in other industries. This is what farming used to look like, which led to massive mega farms, which leads to little flying drones doing whatever little flying drones do in farming. I am not an agriculture major. I enjoy the fruits of their labor. But that is an area of our lives that has been transformed as we move forward in this century based on past centuries. This is what cars used to look like. How many of you drive a Model T anymore? Anyone? All right. Would not drive it at night. That little lantern, probably not going to help you out. No side airbags, by the way. No hybrid engine. No turbo engine. Those tires are going to be a problem to change. And if you have no hair like me, you're going to have a heck of a sunburn driving around in a thing like that. I bring up the Model T for this fact. The car does not look like the car that was created by Henry Ford. That has evolved. The education system is older than the Model T and looks a heck of a lot like it does when it was created in 1896 by several white guys sitting around a table at Harvard. So this is another area of life that each of us has gone through. Our children are going through it. And again, by and large, it has not changed much. Which brings me to what KnowledgeWorks does. We are about creating the future of learning. We work with, there's a lot of words on the screen. You can choose to read them if you like. But if you boil them down to their essence, what we do is partner with schools, districts, communities, regions, and states, and particularly state departments of education, to create new learning opportunities for students and to begin to address the systemic changes that need to happen in education, to create a more personalized, competency-based system where students are moving at their own pace with supports, that we're basing it on learner agency. We're helping to build in the college and career-ready skills, the life-ready skills that students need. We do this at KnowledgeWorks in multiple ways, and we try to bring our assets together. One is by looking at what the future of education will look like. We produce, and there'll be an opportunity at the end of this presentation for you to text and get a copy of, a forecast that looks 10 years out. Based on the trends of today, what could the education system look like and need to be dealing with 10 years down the line? This allows communities, regions, states, districts, et cetera, to begin to plan for and create that future with a guide of what the trends are today, showing us what it could be tomorrow. We also work with states, whether it be at the legislative level or the agency and the regulatory level, to transform policy, to be more flexible, to be more adaptable, to allow for personalized opportunities, competency-based opportunities, being able to move classrooms out of and connecting to the real world, out of the schools and connecting to the real world. We also work on growing educator impact. We go in and partner with schools and districts and provide professional development and coaching. We develop continuum and competencies to help the learning transform in those learning environments. And we also have a group that does research and evaluation to help advance the field and help us improve our own work. And so you see this word personalized learning up there, and I know you might be wondering, what is personalized learning? This is one example of personalized learning. It's not scalable, right? So Bill and Ted got their own guide, Rufus. They got in a phone booth, which apparently was something that existed in the past. And then they went to the past and collected old dudes from history and brought them back for the presentation. Now, obviously, that's not a scalable option, as I mentioned. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. That's what they're telling Socrates Johnson right now. But it does provide a really strong lens into what personalized learning can be. It is about meeting each student where they were. Rufus met Bill and Ted where they were, provided some scaffolding, providing new and interesting, engaging opportunities that were built upon learner agency and a telephone booth. But traditional systems don't necessarily do that. When you look at, we've all played Tetris at some point or know someone that did, whether it was on a Game Boy back in the day or we're downloading an app. So this kind of illustrates how education works through a Tetris lens. There are times when the blocks fit together, move really well, and a student is reading at grade level by the end of third grade. And that's the student on that outside edge. And that's our hope and our dream, but that doesn't always happen. If you think back to your own education experiences or those of your kids, students don't always attain the information in a nice, seamless path. And so getting those little blocks turned to where they fit in That's the basis of meeting each student where they are, making sure those blocks are turned well so they are filling up their knowledge and skills, as well as making sure it's competency-based, making sure that students are mastering the content before they're moving on to new content. That's one of the key pieces that's different in the way we're trying to approach education. So what does the system, a personalized system, begin to look like? Well, one, it has deeper learning, as I mentioned, that's competency-based, that is really driving deeply into the content. We aren't just kind of skirting the edge of things where, oh, we've got to get to World War II. We've got to hurry and get there. I never knew there was World War II. No, I did. But we never got there in history. We always got to I don't know, yeah, some stuff happened after the Reconstruction. But getting that deeper learning, making sure that we're accessing equitable, essential curriculum. So what are the super standards? What are the big pieces of information, the big pieces of knowledge and skills that we need students to get and drive deeply in? Utilizing learner agency, so our students are helping to drive how they are accessing the information, that they're driving some of their own learning. They're using their interest to apply to the knowledge and skills that they need to gain. So we need to make sure we're doing that. And the social emotional learning skills, or college and career ready skills, or career ready skills, or the stuff that people get fired for skills. Whatever you want to call those are the things that we need to build into the education system, and we're trying to do that because by and large, if you think about your own work environments, most people don't get fired for content knowledge. They get fired for not being able to collaborate, not being a good communicator, not knowing how to resolve conflict. Those are the reasons that a lot of people lose their jobs. And so we also are tying these things together at a district level where we have a clear vision and we're building a culture that supports this, and we have transparency throughout the school system and out into the community and the region. We have a big goal at KnowledgeWorks that really is tied to transforming education learning environments in 7 states by 2025. So partnering with state departments, partnering with regions and communities, districts, to really transform learning in 7 states. Currently, the kind of the fuchsia states, if you will, are the states that we're working most deeply in particular South Carolina, Arizona, and North Dakota currently. We have projects that are launching in Ohio and in Utah, and a lot of work at a school level, in particular, district and school level, in Minnesota and Michigan, Connecticut. Now, obviously, California and even this region is certainly bigger, maybe even this room is bigger than North Dakota. So I know that some of you are thinking that it's great, they've got like 100,000 kids. It's actually 107,000. But it is a system where the state superintendent of public instruction says she wants all the students in that state to learn in a personalized, competency-based way that helps drive the economy of North Dakota forward and also provide a greater future for the students. So as I mentioned, and the little timer says I have 23 seconds left, if you want to forecast, this is kind of the action part. If you want to get a future forecast that you can use, you can digest, you can kind of look at it from an educational perspective, and it hits at all the pieces you're thinking about today, where it's economic development or the future of a region. Please text forecast to the number on the screen. Regular text messaging applies. So to get that, and we will get that to you, that way you have that resource. That's kind of the first step, kind of looking at it, thinking about a vision for how education may be different in this region and help drive this region forward. Lastly, or secondly, is I know you have a cradle-to-career partnership here called Bright Futures. Doing great work to look at the data across that continuum of cradle to career in the region. That's fantastic and a huge opportunity by which to kind of leverage and build upon. This is a profile of a graduate, which is basically a vision statement for what we want in our learners when they graduate from high school. This is the state level one that was done in South Carolina by an economic organization called Transform SC. The thing here that you could also do in this region is really invest in, maybe it's Bright Futures, maybe it's all the wonderful higher education entities you have here, other partners, major school districts as well, to invest in what would a profile of a graduate for this region be, and how does that help drive educational outcomes forward, economic outcomes forward, link up to some of the job training pieces you just heard about, help to transform a region. So that would be another kind of call to action that I would have for you. But ultimately, you all in this room together are going to be the ones that are going to help to create the future of learning, and by doing that together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matt. And as he mentioned, MBEP does work very closely with Bright Futures and with its host entity, CSUMB, which is, of course, Eduardo is our board chair, so we do a lot of work with them, and I wanted to just give them a shout out. Matt didn't mention it, but you actually, KnowledgeWorks was the founding entity for those that are in this world of the Strive network. And then eventually spun that off. So they are kind of the birther of this whole idea of cradle to career in the Strive network, and now they're focusing on this new learner-led model. So we thought it was really fascinating, something to share with you all and engage the interest of folks to work more closely and build on the good work that's already happening in the region. So thank you so much. We have time for one question, then we need to move on with our program. Who gets to be the lucky person to ask the one question of Matt? There's one back there.
So I'm a longtime representative of a design college, and I was looking at the list of priorities and the outcomes, and I did notice that arts was at the very bottom of the list, but yet as I read the second column, I saw that the outcomes, collaboration, innovation, and all of those things that are at the top of the list for employment and development, to me, seem to come directly from that opportunity and the exploration of the arts. And I have to share with you, throughout the Bay Area and throughout my career as a college representative, even traveling across the United States, the arts are continuously pushed down, and yet I think that's the essential place to connect all of those things. So I just wanted to get your response to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I think and we would not deprioritize the arts in the way that we think about it, because the arts help to open up individual students' minds. It helps to create new and different opportunities for creativity and innovation to come about. The way South Carolina structured it was more with the kind of the STEM fields up on top. But I would 100% say that arts play just as valuable a role in that. And the kid you see on the screen, which is my youngest, somehow he got, I allowed him to be on the screen, I guess. He's my favorite, don't tell him. He's the art kid, right? I mean, he's the kid that thinks through the lens of how things come together, how aesthetics plays into things. So I 100% agree wholeheartedly and support the arts as a great lever for educational transformation.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Matt, for your time. Let's thank him. Okay, well, that concludes our lightning round for the morning. What'd you guys think? You like that? This is